Hi class, I'm trying to do another demo, this time following my photograph. Hopefully you can see this. And just walk through the process. Hopefully you can see it a little bit better with a straight on view. So I'm beginning with Vine. Again, if you want to use a photograph, you can. Just make sure the setup you use initially with a strong light source, strong shadows. Just I would turn all the lights off so you don't have any conflicting lights or darks. And as you're building with charcoal, remember you're really working with light. So even when I look at my photograph, the background, even though this is lighter, it can't be as light as the highlight. So the highlight really needs to have the prominence. So to get that, and because you're working on a white piece of paper and you're not using an external white, you really need to learn how to manipulate the white of the paper and use it for the most dramatic effect. This is where your eraser is going to help come into play. But I would try still by beginning with building up with the Vine, getting things placed, maybe getting a subtle tone down, and then eventually switching to charcoal pencil. Because it's with the charcoal pencil you can have the most amount of control. And you can layer, you can start to build up tone this way. And as I mentioned in my previous video, I'm ignoring or I'm trying not to do any outlining. So I'm trying to get a strong edge, but see how the values flip-flop. So in this case, I have a dark edge against a lighter background. Then it flips to become a darker cast shadow against a somewhat lighter reflected light. And you'll find too with the charcoal pencil, the compressed charcoal, you can get a lot darker with it. You have more control because it's a point. What they add to it, gum arabic, makes it tougher, doesn't wipe off as easily. But it's a really rich satiny black that if you use it long enough, you can see the benefits of it. Because it's just a really rich color, a rich dark. So if you want to work out a formula, you can even go from dark to light. Sometimes that helps. You're still working light to dark. You're trying to keep the white of the paper. I need to change the tip of this a bit, so that changes. And then I mentioned too about the background. You need to address the background. So we know it's negative space, but as a tone, it can't be just left blank, and it can't be just dark. It has to have some variation in it as well. Because in my photograph, I saw a transition from dark to light. There's a very subtle change from the background to the foreground. Notice I'm using the tip, but laid sideways of the charcoal. So a pretty sharp point, but I'm using the side plane. In this base tone, I want to get a very definitive sense with the light source coming from the upper right. I'm going to have a strong core shadow, or sometimes it's called core shadow or base tone, where you have a definitive base tone, or the darkest value, I should say. So you have a transitioning of values from light into dark, into a reflected light. Remember, the reflected light is very important. It doesn't darken straight to the edge. Light bounces off of things. So light is bouncing off of the tabletop and it's illuminating this underside. Not as bright as the highlight. You have to determine that. It's going to be very subtle, but it also allows it to turn in space and appear more three-dimensional this way. Now if you notice, I haven't done any smearing, so I'm trying to use the tip of the pencil. I'm trying to get, and I find too that I have more control using the tip of the pencil. So the effective roundness, so this whole idea is to give objects a convincing sense of being three-dimensional, that it has a three-dimensional form. That's what chiaroscuro really does. If you look at those Caravaggios or artists from the Renaissance, like Rembrandt, post-Renaissance, you'll see that the strong lights and darks ultimately create a convincing three-dimensional quality, which I think and I feel should be your goal, is to have that kind of believability, that kind of three-dimensional look to your work. But here you can start to see highlight, transitioning, base tone, reflected light, cast shadow. If I wanted to tweak these highlights some more, I can. And this can be developed maybe a little bit more. I can push it further. I can try to smooth out the marks. But hopefully that gives you a better idea of where to go, where to begin, how to transpire, how to progress through this process. And you can really, hopefully you're seeing these elements. So it's important to see them first, and then as you see them, record them. So that in your drawing, ideally, you have something that's very believable and very convincingly three-dimensional. Okay, thanks.